Thank you and good afternoon to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be here in my new capacity. Let me start by thanking very warmly the Greek presidency for their very good work and which we hope to further make progress on. Let me share with you some of the key points and results that we have achieved during this meeting. First of all, we have adopted an amendment related to the issue of tax loopholes for corporate groups. This is part of the progress towards the establishment of a more even global playing field and fight against behaviors leading to base erosion and profit shifting, which affect fiscal income. So this is a crucial progress in the legislation concerning double non-taxation. As you're all aware, we have moved from a world where there was double taxation to one in which there is the risk of double non-taxation, and the Council is strongly engaged in making progress along the lines of the so-called BEPS initiative. We have been also updated by the Commission on the implementing legislation that will determine banks' contributions to resolution funds established under the Directive on Bank Recovery and Resolution. This is ongoing progress, but the Commission will intensify the effort to get a legislative text ready as soon as possible, hopefully by September. We also are having progress on negotiations in the field of saving taxation with countries outside the European Union, notably Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Andorra, Monaco, and San Marino. Also, let me note that the Council has endorsed the terms of reference for applicable rules on addressing capital shortfalls and burden sharing in the context of the asset quality review and stress test. So again, this is to testify that progress is being made towards the full establishment of a banking union, as well as providing stronger financial and banking system in Europe. Then we have started a discussion about how to put growth and jobs at the center of the agenda, how to put growth on a more sustainable path so that jobs are created in Europe. This, as you probably know, are the key priorities of the Italian presidency. We have discussed the work program in some detail with a very extensive and rich and very constructive discussion among colleagues. Let me remind you that the strategy that the Italian presidency suggests to addressing growth and jobs rests on three pillars. First of all, we need better market integration, and this is consistent with the Europe 2020 strategy that is to be reviewed by the end of this year. Second, structural reforms as a major powerful driver of growth in all countries. And third, finance instruments to support and boost investment, both public and private. I can tell you that this broad program was well received by the Council, and we are going to further develop this in concrete terms as we move on. This, in turn, is linked to the conclusion of the European Council that within the existing Stability and Growth Pact rules suggest to make use of the flexibility already existing there, and so to make the best use of the existing rules which are well equipped to boost growth and jobs. So this is in a nutshell a synthesis. Of course, I'll be happy later to take your questions, but now let me hand the floor to Siim Kallas, Vice President of the Commission.
Thank you very much, Piercarlo. I begin by wishing you in bocca al lupo for a successful Italian presidency. Of course, a major challenge for the coming months will be to strengthen the economic recovery in Europe. Our long-term growth strategy, Europe 2020, which we discussed today, contains the right reform priorities, but we must ensure that we deliver on the commitments made. The key to unlocking growth in Europe is to wholeheartedly embrace structural reforms. while maintaining fiscal discipline to reduce high levels of debt. This is no way around these twin imperatives. We had a very good discussion today on the subjects, on the reform subjects. There was a strong consensus that the economic governance framework we have put in place is appropriate and provides a solid basis for sound public finances and the advancement of structural reforms. There was a very clear and welcome emphasis on structural reforms. There was very strong support for the position that the Commission has consistently held, that reforms must go hand in hand with fiscal consolidation and that there is no contradiction between these two. These were the main points, and I think that concerning that Commission is in transitional period, the strategic discussions about economic policies, of course, will be more for next Commission, but we, from Commission side, will make our utmost to contribute to the successful Italian presidency, and I believe that this will be a serious presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's Marco Zattarino. I'm glad to have the first question of the Italian presidency. I will ask my question in English, but Minister, my colleagues from television asked me to ask you if you would be so kind to answer in Italian, if you do care about this. Thank you very much. And Prime Minister Renzi just said that every single euro invested in digital infrastructure should be excluded by the Stability Pact. Minister, I wonder whether this is one of the proposals that Italy will introduce in its agenda, and whether you think it is something that everybody should do. And to Commissioner Kallas, do you think that cutting out every single euro invested in digital infrastructure from the Stability Pact is something compatible with the existing treaties? Thank you very much.
Ha chiesto che risponda in italiano.
I've been asked to reply in Italian.
Apprendo ora di questo statement del Presidente del Consiglio, so semplicemente che c'è pieno accordo nel governo sul fatto che la crescita in Europa va perseguita con tutti gli strumenti possibili all'interno del sistema di regole esistenti.
As Minister said, as well, it's of course an internal discussion what has started already many decades ago. It is, of course, cannot be bad and good expenditures. Expenditures are expenditures, debt is debt, and the Stability and Growth Pact has a very strong framework, what I would like to underline, which was repeated during our discussions by Italian presidency, by Minister Padon and others as well, that Stability and Growth Pact itself, with its rules, is a pillar of confidence. And this has served very well also the vulnerable countries to regain confidence and to have good positions for financial markets. So this is these are the rules, and there is no such an approach that we will start to discuss what kind of expenditures are good and what are bad expenditures and what are military expenditures, for instance. Can military expenditures be excluded from the deficit calculations? You can imagine what happens if this is a possibility. So let's keep the rules. And as Minister said, and we discussed it today as well, that there are a lot of possibilities how to support reforms in member states, using all possible tools in our hands. And but of course there is first the reforms implemented, and then we'll see what can be the assessment and what can be the approach of the European Commission.
Jorge Valero, Europolitics. Apart from the proposal that Marco just mentioned, could you tell us what are the other proposals of the Italian presidency to, let's say, have a more growth-oriented interpretation of the existing rules? What are you proposing to the member states? And in particular, the European Commission published in 2012 let's say, guidelines to, let's say, interpret the Stability and Growth Pact, in which the flexibility was quite put into, let's say, within a framework. Could you tell us if this code of conduct is what the Italian presidency would like to amend? Thank you.
What we propose for growth is, as I mentioned briefly, it's the interaction of three pillars: more integration, more investment, and more structural reforms. These things interact de facto. Let me give you an example. If we would like to see more investment, then we have to make the investment environment more friendly. So we need reforms to eliminate barriers. We need reforms to simplify public administration, to simplify the judicial system. I'm quoting some of the items that are in, as you know, probably the agenda of the Italian government, just as an example. So these things boost investment, and this is what needs to be done. And if you have more single market, then that adds a further dimension to investment. We have a system of rules which already allows for flexibility, and the point is that we are beginning discussion to understand what in practice that means. So our discussion will continue to be very specific oriented, very looking at what kind of measures can be taken in this direction.
Giovanna Pancari, Sky TG24. I'm going to ask my question for Minister Padoan in Italy, if I may, for broadcasting reason. Nel suo discorso introduttivo che lei ha fatto oggi agli altri commissari, lei però ha parlato della necessità per portare avanti riforme che forse nel breve periodo possono avere un impatto inizialmente non troppo positivo, di incentivi. Può dirci vagamente, anche se lei ha detto prima che ovviamente delle misure state ancora discutendo, però può dirci, secondo la presidenza italiana, quali potrebbero essere questi incentivi, farci anche degli esempi concreti. Poi volevo anche chiederle, poco fa il Presidente della Commissione in petto, Jean-Claude Juncker, ha detto che il prossimo commissario agli affari economici sarà un socialista. Se lei considera questa una notizia positiva. And for Commissioner Callas, just a little clarification about your declaration of before. You were saying, in general, do you think that it's possible to foresee, to consider some kind of expenses outside of the deficit or debt count, or not at all?
Simply okay, starting from this last point, you simply open, it's called Pandora box, but it's calculating all expenditures must be calculated, taken into account calculating the budget deficit. What to do with this budget deficit is another issue, but expenditures cannot be excluded from the budget deficit calculations. This is something fundamental.
Sulla prima domanda,
On your first question,
il mio ragionamento a proposito degli incentivi si basa su un'osservazione fattuale, e cioè che le riforme hanno inizialmente un costo e i benefici delle riforme si rafforzano nel medio termine. Allora, cosa vuol dire questo? Vuol dire che deve essere correlato con un punto su cui c'è totale accordo, cioè che le riforme vanno implementate e di conseguenza la valutazione che si fa in Europa dei programmi di politica economica dei paesi deve basarsi sull'effettiva implementazione. L'effettiva implementazione richiede un po' di tempo per dispiegarsi completamente. Quindi questo è un esempio di come
employed.
il
That is
profilo
an example
temporale
of the
delle
time
riforme
profile
può influenzare il
reforms,
giudizio sul paese che fa le
that
riforme.
has an impact on our judgment of the countries which carry out
Domanda sul
reforms.
commissario
Then there's a
vorrei
question for the
evitare di fare
Commissioner.
commenti.
I don't wish to make any comments on that.
Credo che queste fossero le domande che mi aveva rivolto.
I think that I've answered your question.
Hello, Minister. Alexandra Mayer-Hodel with the German press agency DPA. Just a question on Germany, if I may. There was some new trade data that came out today where there's drops in exports and imports that are bigger drops than expected. Are you worried at all that this apparent slowdown now in the German economy might hamper the recovery in the Eurozone? Thank you.
Of course, if it's such a large economy in Europe loses a bit of steam, this is a source of concern for the economy, but also for the rest of Europe. This, unfortunately, confirms my assessment of the current state of the cycle, which is the following. We are slowly, in Europe, exiting the Great Recession, but we're doing that at a slow speed in an uneven pattern, and therefore we need to reinforce our growth efforts. This is the main fact behind the rationale of the Italian presidency proposals.
Consoli from TM News. I would like to ask a question to President Padoan. Do you, as an economist, do you agree with the statement from Mr. Callas, from Vice President Callas, that there is no good expenditure and bad expenditure, and the expenditure is all the same? As an economist, because it seems to me a little bit strange that an economist would accept this statement. Second thing, if I may get out a little bit of this discussion, which is very interesting, Commissioner Barnier, who's not here now, say that you have not mentioned in the presidency presentation the problem of banking separation. And in your answer, you say there are things that I have not mentioned because there was no time, not because they're not important. So my question is, are you going to give importance to the banking separation proposal from the Commission during the Italian presidency? Do you think it should be put forward in the negotiations, or you think it's less important than all the rest? Thanks.
Well, I'm not sure I can answer as an economist or something else, but Sim can correct me. What I understood out of his position is that from the point of view of the budget impact, spending is spending, period. And I guess that's a fact. That's an accounting fact. So this is how I interpret it. So I would, but Sim, tell me if I'm wrong, from the point of view of that answer, you have to put it in context. We're talking about the impact on the budget. As far as President Barnier, I'm sorry that I gave the impression that we are eliminating items in the agenda. That is absolutely not the intention of the Italian presidency. Of course, any presidency has a new agenda to put on the table, but also has to take into account a number of items which are already on the agenda. And therefore, we will do our best to continue on this issue of market separation. Let me add, however, that the issue of market separation is highly complex. It has to deal with a number of national specific banking situations, and it is part of the process which is moving towards more uniform banking regulation, especially with the key issue of too big to fail, too complex to fail, and so forth. So this market separation agenda will continue. Certainly, we will do our best to push it on and to make progress. But this, in any case, will not be terminated in the next few months. It is too complex an issue to be terminated in a few months' work.
If you allow me, I also want to say that what Minister Padoan just said, we are talking about budget calculations and deficit calculations, and there is expenditure, but every budgetary proposal in every country, of course, prioritize expenditures which are more preferred for these policies implemented by the government. So in this sense, of course, there are always differences. What expenditures are preferred and what are less preferred. So, but budgetary calculations, this is, as Minister said, it's accounting issue, and deficit is deficit.
Ivo Caizzi del Corriere della Sera. Per la Presidenza italiana tornerei ai punti che lei ha indicato nella sua introduzione riguardo alla lotta alla grande evasione fiscale. Volevo chiederle relativamente alle strategie aggressive delle multinazionali e alle trattative con la Svizzera e gli altri paradisi fiscali, qual è l'obiettivo che vuole raggiungere la Presidenza italiana da qui a dicembre, diciamo, entro il suo mandato, se può, ritiene di poter arrivare a ottenere degli obiettivi concreti. Sul primo punto, in aggiunta, lei sa che uno dei problemi più complicati è costituito dal Lussemburgo, che non collabora per tutto quanto riguarda i meccanismi del transfer price e via dicendo. È intenzionato durante la sua presidenza a fare pressione sul Lussemburgo, perché se non si sblocca al posto dove ci sono alcune decine di migliaia di holding company, credo che il tentativo di lavorare sulle strategie aggressive delle multinazionali sia abbastanza evanescente.
Stiamo parlando di due cose diverse. Una cosa è il progresso verso l'adozione di un standard globale per lo scambio automatico di informazioni sviluppato dall'OCSE, adottato dal G20. Su questo c'è molto progresso e entro la fine della Presidenza ci sarà l'adozione formale a livello di Unione Europea, ma non solo dei Paesi dell'Unione Europea. Se intendeva collocare il Lussemburgo in questo capitolo, diciamo, della storia fiscale, non c'è problema con il Lussemburgo. Il Lussemburgo si sta adeguando e i rapporti personali, ma direi istituzionali con il Lussemburgo sono assolutamente positivi. L'altro capitolo è quello che lei si riferiva, che io ho citato naturalmente, che è il BEPS, cioè il Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, che è un processo più complesso, che ha diversi moduli, alcuni dei quali si cominciano a specificare in termini concreti. È un processo che ha la forte spinta del G20, al forte supporto dell'Unione Europea. Ci sono questioni più complicate, diciamo così, di quelle dello scambio automatico di informazioni, che pur nella sua complicazione è abbastanza semplice. Altre questioni invece riguardano i criteri di tassazione di alcuni assets, e su cui trovare un accordo richiede più tempo.
Tricky issue, and time will be needed to reach agreement.
Marco Bertacchi, Bloomberg News. The ECB briefed you on the stress test, bank stress test, and the AQR. I was wondering if it's already defined how any announcements prior to the official results will be handled. If a bank needs to tell its shareholders any material news.
The communication strategy of the AQR stress test, that is the comprehensive assessment, of course, is a very delicate issue, but there is much progress on agreeing on the procedures so that we maximize the benefits of transparency, we minimize the costs of unexpected information. I think I can stop there for that point of view.
Thank you very much, then.
Double taxation to one in which there is the risk of double non-taxation. We also are having progress on negotiations in the field of saving taxation with countries stronger financial and banking system in Europe. At the center of the agenda, how to put growth on more sustainable path so that jobs. We have discussed the work program in some detail and very constructive discussion among colleagues. Let me remind you, jobs rests on three pillars: First of all, we need better market integration, and this is consistent, powerful driver of growth in all countries. And third, finance instruments to support and boost public and private. I can tell you that this broad program was well received. This, in turn, is linked to the conclusion of the European Council to make use of the flexibility already existing there, and so to make the best use of the existing. To Sim Kallas, Vice President of the Commission.
Thank you very much. Piercarlo contains the right reform priorities, but we must ensure that we deliver, use high levels of debt. This is no way around these twin imperatives. Period. The strategic discussions about economic policies, of course, will be more.
Questions, just kindly remember to state your name and the media organization that you represent.